Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to edition 36 of The Mayor and I, with me, Lindsay Khan, and the Honourable Nick Buckley.
The Honourable.
MB. And the reason I've got such a long beard and hair is because I've vowed not to shave until Nick gets public office, which hopefully might be quite short.
Several years now.
See how it goes. So, I'm already in a bad mood before we start this one because Nick's already reminded me how Man United did at the weekend. So we lost our first home game by 2-1 to Brighton, which was...
Never thought I'd hear anyone say to me, "Oh, Brighton's quite a good football team."
It is quite a good football team, but Man United should beat Brighton. I think what's even more hurtful is the fact that Liverpool, City and Chelsea have done really well.
Did they, right?
Chelsea beat Wolves 6... Was it 6-2? I don't know. Something like that. So we're off to a really bad start. just to change it. So we've got a lot of things to cover, you and I, but we've already talked about a few things in the previous episode. I want to start this one with kind of two of my favourite people, which most people, when you tell them, get annoyed about. Although I do get the impression more people are starting to look more favourably on Trump and certainly Musk, I think, as we go along. But Mike, so I'm going to talk about Donald Trump, who is in the running for the presidential election, and that's a whole other story that I don't understand how Kamala Harris has zoomed ahead in the polls. It's kind of weird to me, that one. So
I think you have to look at who controls the polls.
Yes. Yeah, I think you're possibly right. I think there's
I can't see him being right. I can't.
No. I just cannot see how Trump is not going to win. And now that RFK has come out in support of him. So, but I don't want to talk about American politics. What I want to ask is a kind of more serious question, really. And I'll just read something out first before we do that. But the question I want to ask you is, what happens to the UK, to us, without Donald Trump and without Elon Musk? And I think I'll just start by reading something out about Twitter, which maybe you've not thought about before. Because you and I always laud Twitter as a place where there's free information. But this is maybe a slightly different perspective on it. The not always peaceful Black Lives Matter protests were massively amplified by Twitter, as the Palestine marches today, or the actions of the militant eco-socialist groups such as Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion. I do not remember anyone calling for a clampdown on Twitter in that context. I'm not saying the left-wing progressives are more prone to spreading or consuming misinformation than people elsewhere on the political spectrum, but since British political Twitter is a predominantly left-wing progressive platform, which is a bit you may not agree with, in absolute terms, most misinformation comes from the progressive left, which I think is true. It's not so much, and what's happening now is there's a lot of criticism of Twitter since Elon Musk has started to criticise Starmer and support Trump. It's not really misinformation as such that bothers Twitter's newfound progressive critics, which include a lot of the Labour MPs. It's the fact they are no longer quite as hegemonic on that platform as they once were. It's the competition they don't like. And as incumbents often do, they are now calling for regulation to protect their market dominant position. So what that's basically saying is Twitter has predominantly been a left-wing vehicle for left-wing progressives spreading misinformation around all their little causes. Now, with Musk and what's happening, the dynamic is shifting, and now we're seeing politicians in this country, including Starmer, calling for the close down, for regulation around social media. So with that in mind, I go back to my original question: what will we do without Elon Musk and Donald Trump, or what happens if we lose them?
So Elon Musk has been a godsend buying Twitter. That's in a place now you can have decent discussions, decent confrontation, find out different people's point of view, and it's not controlled like it was before. I was banned off Twitter. They didn't like my point of view, so I was banned, lifetime ban, no warning, lifetime ban.
And then Elon Musk
brought me back.
Brought you back personally?
Not personally. I had to.
I think he did.
The elite we have, and all elite, don't like free speech. because free speech is always used to criticise them. And when you're in power, why do you want to be criticised? It's easier if you're not criticised. So that's what they want. That's what they're going to try to do now with Twitter. Elon Musk is a very unique character. First of all, he doesn't care what you think. He's richer than you. He's richer than, I think, everybody in the world.
Yes, he is richer.
So what you're going to do is also based in America. So there's no extradition from America. America has the Second Amendment or First Amendment with free speech. So there's nothing our government can do about Elon Musk. All they possibly could do is ban Twitter. And if they tried that would be a action of a dying power, a dying government trying to do something like that. We would then have Twitter underground. So Twitter wouldn't go away. It just would be a lot harder to access, but it wouldn't go away. It would still be there, and it would be, it would be more dangerous to the elite. So Elon Musk, I think, we were talking about leaders before, and I think he's become an unofficial world leader against the elites we have at the moment because he's given us this tool. And all the leftists love Twitter because it used to be their platform, like all left-wing platforms, all of them. But I love Twitter, it's great. So the left-wing people are now talking about leaving Twitter.
Well, they actually complain about Twitter on
Twitter, and say we're going to leave Twitter. They never do. Just like the idiots in America who are saying we're going to leave America if Donald Trump wins. Now, Donald Trump's a different kettle of fish altogether. Donald Trump, as the American president, can't affect the UK, and there's no.
You really think so?
Yeah, no direct benefit of having Trump
in
power in America for the UK. What he is, if he wins, is he then becomes a beacon of hope for the UK because of the changes and things he will do there. So we'll be able to see someone in real time doing the things we want to do here, and some of the naysayers here will shut up when we say we're a finished country, there's nothing we can do. Well, it's happening in America, isn't it? Look what he's doing with this department. Look what. So I want him to win. He'll be an indirect benefit to the UK.
I disagree. I think he'll be a direct benefit to the UK. So if, for example, if Trump gets into power, and I really, dear listeners, I really hope he does get into power. If he gets into power, if then the British government start talking about we're going to close Twitter down, we're going to arrest Elon Musk or whatever, he will stand up for Twitter and he'll stand up for Musk. So I think if the British government or the government says negative things about people we admire, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? If you think about this, Tommy Robinson, Farage has a direct link to Trump. Farage heads up the Reform Party. Trump endorses Farage all the time. That's got to have an impact on the UK. Tommy Robinson is now being retweeted by Elon Musk. Elon Musk has a direct connection into Trump as well. They did an interview recently together, didn't they? So I think there's a direct link from Trump and Musk right into the heart of the UK, more importantly into the heart of the UK, the side of the UK that we are trying to support, we are trying to protect, which is people like Farage, people like Tommy Robinson, who are being politically oppressed every single day as we see them. So I think if Trump gets in, I think there'll be a massive impact, a direct impact on the UK, and there will be that kind of oblique impact as well. But I think there is a direct, at the moment, connection, which is why my question is, if Trump doesn't get in, if Musk does get silenced, what the hell happens to us?
That will be a disaster. There's a chance Trump won't win the election.
Yeah, which
I find hard to believe. But there's always a chance for elections. You know, he may not win, and that'll be a huge disappointment.
Well, might he not win because they'll be fixing the election?
They'll be trying everything. I mean,
it's the Democratic Party is a horrific apparatus, isn't it? I mean, look what they did to Biden. Biden wanted to, senile old man that he wanted to stay in there.
Yeah.
They just chucked him out and brought in Harris with no vote, nothing. There she is, and she's a new presidential candidate.
Yeah, well, throw him out was expected because all political parties are ruthless. It's the fact they thought they were going to let him run in the first place. That's the shocking bit, that they didn't know how bad he was. They should have been watching our podcast. We could have told them.
Yes, we did.
But they didn't know how bad he was.
We did cover him,
yeah. I think Musk is the key there. I think if one of them was going to go,
You'd be more worried if it was Musk.
Yes.
That's interesting.
I'd be more worried if it was Musk, because Musk is the freedom fighter at the moment online. I really hope Trump wins, though. Trump will be a benefit to the UK. But we will wait and see.
But I think that's the question I'm asking you, Nick. What is the way forward if, God forbid, A, Trump doesn't win, and B, Musk somehow gets silenced or something happens to him? What is the way forward? I know it'll be a disaster.
What's the way forward for us?
Yeah.
It'll be a longer fight, but I think the outcome will still be the same. I think instead of it being a decade, I think it might be several generations, maybe. Because I think once it starts, and this has started, I think this has started now, the British people have woken up. I don't think they're going to go back to sleep. They'll make things harder for us, but Soviet Europe was making things hard for their people all the time, and eventually they collapsed. I just can't see how they get rid of Musk. I can see how they get rid of Trump.
Yeah.
I just can't see how they get rid of Musk.
The way they get rid of Musk is maybe the way they try to get rid of...
Kill him.
Yeah. I mean, it's a possibility, isn't it?
It is, but he doesn't do big rallies and stuff like that. He doesn't want to, he's a very insular person. I would imagine he don't even like talking to people he doesn't know.
Yeah.
So,
and I would hope he's got a decent security.
I would imagine he's got very good, but I don't think he puts himself in any situation. Remember when that person was tracking his private jet around the world?
I heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, somebody created a website, got his private jet transponder number, and then you could go on where'smusk.com and would show you where he was, where his plane was at any minute of every day. And he got that took down, he got that stopped.
Without Twitter, without Musk, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the mainstream media and the nudging we're seeing at the moment. The mainstream media have been hand in glove with the government in terms of demonising these people who stood up and tried to get their voices heard.
For decades.
Yeah. So there's an article here. More worrying than the censors themselves is a culture of gloating that surrounds them. The front page is saying nailed and jailed amongst mugshots of riotous deviants. The smugness of centrists on social media as yet another violent scruff is put away. Then the reports that Kier Starmer leaned really heavily on the justice system to enforce swift punishment on the rioters in order to amplify the political message. So political interference in the justice system is now okay, basically. So Kier Starmer leaned on the justice system, but the mainstream media then supported and encouraged all that process. Without something like Twitter, that's the only message we will be seeing, isn't it?
Twitter is basically that printing press in René's cafe during World War II that's printing the newsletters for the resistance. That's what Twitter is. It's the only way our side gets the information and gets any information that's not been approved by the blob, by the elite. So that's how important Twitter is. It's our only way of accessing easy information that hasn't been vetted and approved. Still a lot of crap on Twitter and lots of lies and lots of misinformation, but in between all that is the truth.
Yeah.
And it's down to us to be clever and figure out what the truth is and try to find it.
And the BBC just gets worse, doesn't it? So this guy said here, I just cancelled my TV licence. Hearing the BBC describe Ismail Haniyeh, is he a Hamas? I think he's a Hamas.
I think this is the Imam from London.
Imam from London, as describing him as moderate and pragmatic.
And he's got videos online talking about how you stone women for adultery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they describe this, I think it's a Hamas leader they were talking about, moderate and pragmatic. The BBC sanitisation of Hamas predates October 7th, but given the brutality of what happened, its response tells us that the organisation had lost all humanity. Viewers first of all had to endure the broadcast of the refusal to refer to Hamas as terrorists, referring to the more neutral militant. Lastly, it took to adding the rejoinder prescribing the UK as a terrorist organisation, rather than actually, as somebody else is telling them to say that, basically, rather than actually just saying they're a terrorist organisation.
Well, they normally don't even say that.
No, I think they had to, didn't they? Because there was so much protesting, basically.
There's a Hamas leader, or former leader, living in a council house in London.
I think there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I think there's quite a few.
Living in a tax subsidised council house, and we have a former Hamas leader.
This other thing that's happening aside from that is the constant what's called nudging by the government and the media as well. And I think an example of that was the Home Office recently put out a statement on its, and you've probably seen it, I don't know if the viewers can see it there, it's just here basically.
Yeah.
So the Home Office, so this is the Home Office, it's a government organisation representing the law, basically, everything like that. And it's basically a boasting tweet that says more than 1,000 arrests related to the recent public disorder. So this is our government arresting, as we've said, what I believe are political prisoners, people who've taken part lawfully in protests in anger to the killing of the 3 girls in Southport. The Home Office are boasting around this. You don't see them boasting about Notting Hill Carnival.
I don't think they're boasting, they're threatening.
They're threatening.
They're telling people, look what we've done.
Yes.
And we're going to do to you
yes.
if you step out of line. It's a threat.
And a threat, and I call it nudging. But what's worse on this, and I think people have seen this, it says these criminals will face the full force of the law. Now the reason that is horrific is because you are not a criminal until you're convicted of a crime. They've arrested 1,000 people. They're boasting about that, threatening about that. Then they're labelling these people criminals before they've had the chance.
Yep.
To have
before they've been judged with a group of 12 of their peers.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're not only seeing the mainstream media doing what they're doing. Government organisations are also now indoctrinating us with these lies all the time, basically. And it's, I don't think people realise what's happening when they're seeing this stuff. And we see it occasionally from police forces as well, don't they? They'll publish something on their website which is a lie or whatever it might be. But we're seeing more and more of this now as we go forward. It's nudging.
Yeah, well, you can call it nudging. I call that's a threat to me.
Yeah.
They're threatening people that if you get involved in this, not only are we going to arrest you like these 1,000 people, but we're going to tell everybody you're guilty before anyone's deemed that you have been guilty. And so that's prejudging a case.
Yeah.
That, to a certain extent, that's grounds for appeal.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Grounds for appeal. Because I was found guilty in this court case because the Home Office told everybody online that I was already a criminal.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, part of this nudging is something and it relates to immigration. So you and I talked about this before, but we talked about when people say, "Oh, immigration makes our country rich in culture, multicultural." We've had immigrants for decades or for centuries.
Yeah.
We're a
ask them what they mean by that, because they can never give you an answer.
They can never give you an answer. They can give you they talk about a mongrel society that we're all. Yeah. I mean, in my case, technically it's true because my dad did come from Trinidad, but there was a very interesting article I read, and it was about. It was about the history of immigration in the UK, and we've all heard of Enoch Powell and his famous Rivers of Blood. Now, what he was describing then, and to be fair, I don't know the speech. I don't know if you've read it or heard it, But I think what he was describing then is that if immigration, this was around the time of
68.
68.
He did that speech 5 days before I was born.
Oh right, okay. Is this somehow there was a connection there?
I'm writing a book at the moment, and so I was researching this the other day.
Right. You're not the illegitimate son of Enoch Powell, are you?
I don't think so.
So he did that in 1968,
Yep.
and basically he was saying if we don't control immigration into this country, there will be these famous rivers of blood. Basically, he was describing what really is starting to happen. Probably now. I think. And I think a lot of people say, oh, Powell racist or whatever, blah blah blah. We've had immigration for years or whatever, but in fact, what was interesting is that 74% of Britons polled at the time supported his recommendations, despite the fact he was described as a racist and he was an intellectual, this guy. Now, 3 years later, in 1971, the government pushed through the Commonwealth Immigrants Act, basically. And the purpose of that was to curtail migration, and it worked, basically. The Immigration Act did likewise, and in 1981 the British Nationality Act tightened immigration further. So in fact, from that point, 1968 to 1997, immigration was controlled very tightly by legal structures, legal apparatus that prevented excessive immigration into the country. So this idea that we had a multicultural society and loads of people coming in is not true.
Well, it is true. It's just not true compared to the figures we've got now.
Correct. Sorry, there was immigration, whatever, but nothing like the quantity we have
No,
now.
but those people in the 50s, 60s and 70s were telling government all the time, you need to stop this immigration.
Yes. Yeah.
Nobody ever wanted it.
Yes.
The government set up a cabinet committee in 1953, I think it was, 5 years after Windrush, because the public were telling them, stop this immigration, stop immigration.
Yeah.
So it's been a problem since Windrush.
Yeah.
The British people, the English people have never wanted immigration.
Yeah.
Never been asked. And when they were asked in a roundabout way, always said, oh, we don't want it.
Yeah. And I think the point is there, we talk about uncontrolled immigration. It was controlled until 1997.
No, because from up to the 70s, if you had a British issued passport in any of the former colonies, you could come here.
Yeah, that's how my father came here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to apply for a visa. You could just turn up. That's what the Windrush generation did.
What I mean, yes, but it was controlled within terms of numbers is what we're talking about, the volume of people arriving.
That wasn't controlled. People, everyone who wanted to come came.
Yes.
It was getting here.
And how many came?
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, tens of thousands.
Yeah,
but
that wasn't controlled because they wanted less of them. They were just all the ones who could afford the journey to get here.
Okay.
Because it was very long, very expensive to get here.
Yeah, there was a form of control, I suppose.
Price control.
In 1997, Tony Blair's new Labour was elected. It immediately set out to raise immigration levels in a deliberate effort to make Britain truly multicultural.
Yeah.
It removed the primary purpose rule in 1997. I don't know what that is, but I think you know. That required those marrying foreigners to prove they had not wed to secure British residency. So it removed that. In 1998, I don't know if you know this stuff, Nick. In 1998, it removed border exit checks to all destinations, making it impossible to know who was in the country. Now that's a big one.
Yeah.
So what that's saying there is, anybody who came into the country with the intent of just staying for a couple of weeks, or I'm just on holiday or whatever, you don't know if they actually left. That's a massive one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that means anybody who flies into the country, we don't know whether they've left or not.
Never know, That really helps illegal migration, that did.
In 1999, it expanded student permits. In 2000, it relaxed work requirements. In 2004, it expanded post-study work visas. All these steps, sometimes taken without parliamentary oversight, which I wasn't aware of, led to significant increases in immigration.
And 2004 was when we allowed Eastern Europe to join the EU, and we allowed them to come here straight away. So we got the influx of the Poles, Bulgarians, Romanians.
I'm coming on to that bit.
All right.
So added to this, immigration from the EU increased dramatically in 2004. Is that what you said? The EU expanded with the accession of the so-called A10 countries.
Yeah.
Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Slovakia and Slovenia. Given 8 of these countries had been recently members of the much porous Soviet bloc, many existing EU members harboured concerns that sudden access to the EU's freedom and movements would lead to a surge in migration. So get this. So the Netherlands, Holland, France, Germany, Austria, Spain, Portugal and Belgium and Luxembourg placed restrictions on those countries.
They did?
Yeah.
We didn't.
Yes. So they placed restrictions on these called A8. I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I didn't know this, and I think, I'm not if a lot of our viewers will be aware of this. So they placed restrictions on migrant workers from the 8 countries, including quotas or 2 to 5 year transition periods, not Britain. The Home Office estimated that 5,013 immigrants a year would arrive from the A8 members.
Yeah.
In fact, guess what the actual immigration was from the A8 in those years?
Oh, 1 million, hundreds of thousands.
72,000 a year, 8 times more than the middle of the Home Office forecast rate. Yeah. So that's when it really started.
Yeah.
In 2004. I think the gates were opened by Blair in the 70s. 2004, despite the fact our European neighbours were saying, no, we're not having any of these guys from this lot, we said, come on in.
Yeah. Which made all the ones who would have gone to those countries just carry on and come to us.
Yes.
Yeah. So we would have got less if all of them would have opened their borders.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Then, in 2014, I think this is what you said, the same thing happened with the accession of Romania and Bulgaria.
Yep.
So we opened our doors to Romanians. By 2017, there were 413,000 Romanians and Bulgarians. So within 3 years, 500,000 Romanians and Bulgarians were living in Britain, implying that 90,000 had immigrated every year since the beginning of 2014.
Yeah.
So that's the history of immigration here. It wasn't actually that bad until Blair came to power.
It wasn't bad compared to the numbers now. But if you were here in the 50s and 60s living in the inner city, those people then were saying these numbers are bad now.
Yes.
It's all perspective.
Yeah. But somehow there's been a dislocation, hasn't there? There were the views of the people around in the 1960s and 70s about we're not happy with this. And suddenly something shifted with Blair, didn't it, in 1997? And was that we were just not being told what was happening?
It was the new ideology that immigration is great, diversity is our strength. And the Labour Party was looking at these going, most of these are going to be Labour voters.
Yeah.
And they're correcting that because most immigrants are Labour voters when they get here. In last year, 2023, the official stats for EU citizens post-Brexit registering to stay here, long-term residency, because the EU residents who came here before Brexit were entitled to stay, and they could claim residency. So up to last year, 6 million have claimed residency.
And how many did they estimate would claim residency?
They thought there were about 2 million EU residents in the country, and 6 million have claimed. Because like you said, we don't know who's in the country,
We don't. And this, something I want to talk about now, which is, we've talked about...
Before we move on, can I just, my last point on the mass immigration.
Yeah.
So, immigration has always been seen as filling vacant jobs. Let's get the young, the fit, the clever, the intelligent. They'll come over here, they'll benefit our economy, and then they'll go home. The vast majority of migrants never go home. And we thought they would go home. We've never asked them to go home. We thought if they're staying, they'll integrate. They never integrated. We never asked them to integrate. And that is a huge part of this problem. Every step along the way, we didn't understand what was going to happen. We thought they would come, earn money, go home. No one went home. Then we thought they're still coming. They're going to integrate, and they'll just be like British. They didn't integrate, and we just keep making the same mistakes.
And the political class, the elite talk constantly about this multiculturalism and how it benefits us.
Yep.
And there's a quote here by the Lib Dems. Just, I despise the Lib Dems. They're just dreadful. Baroness Sarah Ludford, in response to the rise of anti-immigration sentiment, tweeted out an ode, and there's this described as tweeness. Basically, they kind of wrap up the immigrant issue and the way the immigrants are and everything in a kind of very sentimental, saccharine kind of view. So this is what she said about immigration. So she lives in Islington, obviously. I'm a white Islington Londoner. And this is the kind of crazy mental image that they have of immigration. Neighbour, Italian. Local shop, Turkish. Dry cleaner, Iranian. Dressmaker. We all have a dressmaker, don't we?
We do.
Albanian. Hairdresser, Romanian. Builder, Polish. IT chap, South Asian. Staff, in M&S, Waitrose IS, very varied. Youngster giving me my tube seat, black. So that's the way they see this. So basically everybody who serves her is an immigrant, and she thinks that's an example of immigration and multiculturalism.
It is, because that type of immigration benefits her.
Yeah.
Because all those people work less than white British people will do. So therefore, I get cheaper dressmaking, I get cheaper dry cleaning, and I don't believe one moment that black kid gave her a seat on the tube. But she had to put a black one in there.
Yeah, she was missing a black one.
She did, so she, I'll do that. But this is how they see the world. Not once did she put, and all this has damaged the 10 million British people on benefits.
Yes.
Who can't get jobs that pay enough to come off benefits and work. Not once does she mention the high crime rate. Not once does she mention any of the problems.
No.
She's one of these females who is just overly concerned with being kind, being compassionate, being nice. It's all those feminist traits that are really important in raising children. There's a good chance she hasn't got any children herself. So therefore I've never heard of one, that she projects these things onto migrants, because migrants look like us, but they're not as good as us. But you know what, I'm going to be nice to them. We do the same with the Paralympics. We look down upon them and go,
you get a real sense of that, don't you, in that article? She's almost condescending to these people, isn't she? My dressmaker is Romanian.
all my servants. They're very nice, aren't they? But they're all foreign. But that works. 150 years ago, she'd sounded like the wife of a army general based in India. Do you know what? My servants are Bangladeshi. My gardener, he's really good. He's from the Punjab. And that's exactly what she sounds like.
Yeah. And that's the kind of view they have. And I actually think she believes it, though, when she's saying
100%
that.
believes it.
She's not addressing any of the actual issues relating to what sits behind those people. And
she doesn't understand the problems behind it.
Yeah.
And that post would have got loads of likes and retweets.
Oh, God, yeah.
And that's the self-validation of her realising, do you know what? I am an amazing person. I really am. And because there's people out there who don't like immigrants, but I actually do. I don't mind them serving me.
Yeah.
I really don't mind them serving me.
Yeah.
Not only are they good, they're cheap.
Yeah.
I like immigrants. I'm just wonderful. And that's what she's saying.
And this is what I think is horrific about all this, because they've started to ascribe this kind of tweeness to things, isn't there? So there's an article here that somebody wrote, and it's talking about two-tier policing and all that. And he said here, I grew up when the IRA were committing regular atrocities.
Yeah.
I don't remember similarly twee reactions. If Sutton or Basil Brush had released a statement on the bombings at Warrington or Enniskillen, there would have been uproar at such crassness. It would simply have never occurred to people who had their hands up children's puppets that it was remotely felicitous for them to pass comment. But obviously it isn't. So basically what we're seeing now is they're dressing up these horrific crimes or whatever in a way. They're bringing on celebrities or whatever to kind of make them seem not quite as dreadful, or that perception. And then there's this expression of communities as well. Again, another twee expression, an expression of something that's kind of safe and friendly or whatever. And we used to have communities in England when, like I said, when I grew up in Harehills, we had a community, an English community, a British community on our street. But they're now weaponising this word community, aren't they, against the English people, the British and English people, because the white British English people do not have communities. We don't have communities anymore. It's just the Muslims who've got communities, the Asians who've got communities, the Romanians who've got communities. We don't have a community, do we?
Ours is the right-wing scum community.
Yes, ours is a far right community basically. So, I think Musk tweeted about this, didn't they? Because I think Starmer said we're going to protect our
communities,
our Muslim communities or whatever, and Musk said, what about protecting all communities in the country? But the community thing, and again there's another idea which was written by, I don't know who this writer is, Aris Roussinos, talking about the future of multi-ethnic Britain, pushing to reshape Britain as a community of communities, and we're heading in that direction now.
Yeah.
So you and I have talked about this. You call them tribes, don't you, basically, or a tribal thing. A genuinely multicultural state that rejected the narrow English-dominated, backward-looking definition of the nation, ethnic identities of the British one, of which the British one is to be framed as one. Okay, so we have ethnic identities, of which, as the British are one of those ethnic identities, are to be embraced. Then what it then goes on to say, which is really interesting, these states where you have multiple ethnic communities basically have echoes of the Ottoman Empire, have echoes of the British Empire, where basically a more tolerant form of empire where communities are equal and the ruling class can relive the Raj as goodies basically. So the idea they're talking about there is the fact that behind this process, this creation of multiple communities all living in harmony, is the idea if you have a bunch of divisive communities, which include now, by the way, the white British community, all squabbling with each other or whatever, you as the government or the elite then sit over it, basically controlling, calming, being seen as the overall, basically, good person controlling all these grubby little communities. Is that where you think they want us to head?
That sounds very similar to Yugoslavia under Tito. So we all understand Yugoslavia. When he died and the country broke up, we had mass civil war, the Bosnian genocide. We had killing each other, neighbours killing each other. Yugoslavia only looked like they got along because they had a dictator. They were more afraid of the dictator than they were of each other. Once you remove the dictator, all these communities slaughter each other, and that's the lesson from history. His description there is a perversion of A, the British Empire, and B, of his ideology. This is just ideology. The British Empire wasn't about multiculturalism. The British Empire was about different countries with their culture being run by the British. But the British at any one point never had many people in these countries. The armies in those countries were run by British officers. All the soldiers were local people because England's UK is only tiny. We don't have enough soldiers.
Yeah.
So his whole understanding of history has just been perverted.
Yeah.
And he's looking, like most people do, we're all guilty of this. We try to look for the bits of history or bits of an argument that validate what we already think, as opposed to looking for the truth, which might then dismantle our own beliefs. And we're all guilty of that. But is that commentator right? Because I think the commentator is commentating on that article. Is the commentator right that if the elite, the government, create a country, an environment, and it's happening, isn't it? Because the number of immigrants that are living in here, where we see situations where the white British are a minority. We've seen that in London and Birmingham and Manchester, you said already. They then become just one of the many communities there. Yes, I don't think it's been done by design necessarily,
Right.
but I think once the reality is here, it makes perfect sense for politicians to make the most of the situation on the ground.
Yeah.
And it makes it's common sense that if you're trying to run London, and London is now made up of 20, 30 different communities, you can either let them complain between themselves about how shit the government is and how shit the mayor is, or you can have them arguing against each other and leaving me, the mayor, alone.
Yeah. Almost Solomon-like in your, yes, I'll deal with this, or yes, I'll sort out this problem between the communities.
Yeah.
But what that does is it then takes away agency from the native British people, doesn't it? Because they're just one of many others squabbling at the lower level while the elites look on, basically.
It does, but it also sets the path for mass violence further on down the line, that we don't trust each other. We live in a low trust society because you're different from me. I don't see you as English or British. I see you as competition. And when things go really bad, we'll start killing each other. The people we kill first are the people we think are not like us.
Yeah. It's just an interesting idea that might be part of the agenda in this process, that they're trying to create that division amongst everybody.
I think what's at the very base of this ideology is the world view that if we can get rid of all countries and all governments and be run by one government, we are then just one people on one rock floating in the solar system. That will end all wars, because we're just one government with one people. There'll be no more Indians, Nigerians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis. We're all one people. No more war. We can share resources across the world, and that'll be the fairest we'll ever have. That's their base dream. It's a nice dream to have. You can't call someone evil for wanting that. That sounds fantastic. To get us to that will require someone 1,000 times more worse than Hitler to get us to that stage.
Yeah.
Their dream is just a dream.
Yeah.
We may get there eventually, but it might take 100,000 years. Slow change. They're trying to do it in several generations, and the amount of violence that will take will be horrendous.
It's a communist dream, isn't it, at the end of the day? One of the things I've noticed a lot, and we've talked earlier about the people being what I'm terming now political prisoners. One thing I've noticed quite a lot of is that children have been dragged into this quite a lot, and quite a lot of children have been arrested. I'll just give you a couple of examples here. Outside the International Hotel in Aldershot, it was I think it's a 15-year-old girl. The child defendant from Aldershot appeared at Basingstoke Magistrates Court, sitting at youth court, accompanied by her mother and stepfather. She appeared nervous, fidgeting. She confirmed her name and entered a guilty plea of a single charge of violent disorder. So this is a 15-year-old girl in that situation. Boy 15, so they brought out this new charge called rioting. Have you heard about this?
No.
Yeah, so it's like apparently if you charge it with rioting, you can bang them away for even longer.
Yeah.
A 15-year-old boy became the first person to be charged with the offence of rioting in relation to recent unrest. So they've actually made an example of this 15-year-old boy, the Crown Prosecutor. So they've actually gone out their way to get hold of a 15-year-old kid and charge him under a new, more severe legislation, basically. He appeared in South Tyneside Youth Court. Rioting is an offence that carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. I don't know what his charge was. There's a number of other examples I've got in my notes here where children have been specifically charged and maybe convicted to youth custody. I don't know what's gone on. Why are they doing that? Because I can kind of get, I don't get it. I don't agree with it. And I think it's horrific of what they've done to these people shouting at horses and pushing over fences. It's horrific what's happened there. But then why would they want to make an example like that specifically in it? And of course the mainstream media are happy to report this stuff, the idea of a young thug and all that bullshit. These are kids at the end of the day. And I've got 5 children. I know exactly. A 15-year-old boy has no idea what's going on in the world. They, in my view, I know you may have different views because you've got a different background to me. But, so they seem to have gone out of their way to deliberately entrap and convict and prosecute children in this recent process. What's going on there?
30, 40 years in this country now, we bend over backwards not to prosecute children, especially for the first-time offences, especially because once you've pulled them into the criminal justice system, they're more likely to remain in the criminal justice system and more likely to re-offend. That's according to the experts. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's the standard excuse, the standard reasoning. The reason why they've done that to these children is the same reason why they've gone for the adults. It sends the message. If we're willing to do this to 15-year-old girls, to prosecute them and lock them up, what are we willing to do to you? So be afraid. Be very afraid. So we can do that to her, this little girl. We'll take no qualms about destroying your life, mate.
We'll have no.
So that's part of the message. The other message is to make sure that other young people and parents now know we'll prosecute your children. We're coming for all of them. It's another scare tactic.
It's brutal though, isn't it?
These children, if you base it on what's been going on for 20, 30 years, these children never would have been named.
Yeah.
They would have been taken to court, and so they should if they've committed an offence. They never would have been named in court because that ruins their future life about getting over this one incident and stuff like that. They're making political examples of children.
It's a serious thing for a child to be involved in something like that, to get that on your record or whatever, isn't it?
Well, any of these children now who go for a job, and as an employer, I do this, I usually Google their name to see what's online about them. So whenever they go for a job now, a decent job, the employer will Google their name and go, race riots. Do you think they're getting that job now? They're not getting any decent job now.
So it's a further example, as in 1984, of this is just stamping on your face, basically.
Yes.
Just a little bit more of it. Here we are.
So everybody else can see what we're doing.
Yeah.
And you will be afraid of us.
And I just think that is horrific. That you can be involving children in this, that you can be arresting them, that you can sending them to detention centres.
I've not got a problem with arresting them. I've not got a problem with detaining them if that's what the law states because of their crime. Young people at 15 know what they're doing. I've met lots of violent disorder young people who need locking up. That's not the issue. The issue is they shouldn't be used as political pawns. They shouldn't have their names and addresses for minor crimes going in a paper because that can ruin the rest of their life. If we're going to treat other kids this way, then we need to treat all kids this way. We can't just go, just because it's politically convenient, we're going to destroy these kids' lives just because it's better for the government. I want equal-handed justice in this country, not it all depends when you committed your crime and what you're actually doing, and that dictates.
And what the political motive
exactly.
behind,
I just don't want that.
In connection with the children thing, I think there's some interest, and I think you've talked about this. I've seen you talking on your website about this, and I think this is relevant because a lot of kids who were in COVID are now adults, aren't they? They're technically they have become adults. So Kier Starmer's trying to deliver economic growth, but actually the worklessness crisis is getting actually worse. So now 9.5 million people of working age, will include a lot of kids from COVID, I'm guessing, who have now reached adulthood, are either not in work or not looking for work. They're economically inactive, and the figures are actually quite staggering. If you go back to 2019, we had 8.5 million inactive. Now there's 1 million more people inactive, basically. And employment among UK adults has also dropped since COVID. So in 2019, there were nearly 27.5 million in work. Now there's only 26.2 million in work.
And we get an extra million coming in the country every year.
Well, I think
it's still going down.
I think that's what's interesting as well, because also what is very relevant to this is the number of foreign-born adults employed in the UK over that time has increased by over 1 million. So the summary of this, if I'm reading these numbers correctly, is in the last 5 years, the number of British people British-born, British white people working in this country has dropped by a million people.
Mm.
The number of economically inactive people has dropped by 1 million people, and the number of foreign-born workers has increased by 1 million people. That's presumably a direct correlation, isn't it?
It could look like it. I'd have to see more figures to have a look what's behind that. But what we've done in this country, we've been doing it for decades, but it's all ramped up since COVID, is we've allowed British people of all colours, people who are born here, British people, to opt for benefits, for convenience. And the government have said to themselves, that's too much like hard work, getting them off benefits into work. What we're going to do is we're going to keep them. We can't stop immigration. They're all coming. They'll fill the jobs. So we keep putting British people on benefits into a crap life, and we keep letting more and more immigrants come to do the jobs. That seems fine in the short term, but what we don't understand is all those people on benefits are costing the taxpayer. And so we're creating a bigger black hole that we need more and more immigrants to come in to fix. And then immigrants are here then and use public services. So we need to spend money on public services more. So we're in a Ponzi scheme where this black hole is getting bigger and bigger. And like all Ponzi schemes, it'll eventually collapse upon the way upon itself because there's no more money. And that's why Ponzi schemes collapse. Government needs to get tough. But we haven't got a government who's tough because they're all short term. They're only worried about the next election. We need to get people off work, off benefits, into work, and we need to reduce mass immigration, and that will increase their wages and create better paid jobs.
If I analyse this as a purely numerical effort, there's kind of two scenarios. Let's assume there was no immigration. Is it 1 million people coming in last year, was it? Net migration, was it last year?
Gross migration has been 1.2 million last year and the year before.
Yeah, let's go back a year then.
About 700,000 net every year for the last couple of years.
Let's go back a year and say we stopped immigration a year ago. So that would mean then, in terms of numbers, that instead of having now 2 million people, and I'm talking now about 1 million people who are immigrants and 1 million people who are native to this country, we would have 1 million people. Of those 1 million people that were here, if they were in the UK, there would be a demand for 1 million jobs for those people because we know the 1 million immigrants took those jobs. And possibly the incentives, or if the incentives are right, those people will be working in those jobs. What we have instead is 2 million people who all need accommodation, who all need health service, who all need education. Of those 2 million people, only 1 million are working, 1 million are on benefits, basically. And that's a juxtaposition to 1 million people who, when nothing had changed the population, 1 million people could be working, contributing tax, only occupying half the number of housing, only requiring half the health service, and only requiring half the education. Isn't that a reality of what's happened?
Yep. That's why our public services are crumbling, and that's why we're almost bankrupt.
So how, with that analysis, because it's very clear, those numbers are incredibly clear, aren't they? With that analysis, how can anybody be saying immigration is working?
For this particular reason, I had to think the other day about a really simple way of explaining this, and I come up with this. You've got 2 houses next door to each other. Married couples live in both of them. Both of the married couples' combined income is £100,000. So that house earns £100,000. That house earns £100,000. The government then makes one of those houses take in 2 migrants. One of the migrants is a delivery driver. He's on £15,000 a year, and his wife is on benefits, gets £5,000 a year. So now we have 2 houses next door to each other. That house earns 100,000 and that house earns 120,000. Which is the richest house?
The 100,000, because you've got 2 people both getting 50 grand each.
So we start looking at quality of life and how much
Yeah.
each individual has money.
Sorry, was that the right answer?
That is the right answer.
Okay.
So
okay.
what our government's been doing for
Did
decades
you hear
now,
that, viewers? That was the right answer.
finally right on a question.
Yeah.
So what the government's always
Took me
been
a while.
doing is looking at our country and going, the more people we have moving here, the richer the country looks like, because we earned 6 billion last year, we now earn 7 billion this year. But there's an extra 2 million people living here. Everyone's quality of life has dropped.
Yeah.
But the government says, we're the 6th richest country in the world, look how well we're doing. That's the Ponzi scheme. That's the 5-card trick of what they're playing on us, telling us we're richer, we're richer, we're richer. We're not richer. It just, you can twist figures to make it look like we're richer, but your answer was correct. The first house is richer because they've still got £50,000
Yeah.
each.
And the parallel I was just saying then about the million, isn't it? What we've got now is 2 million people, 1 million working, 1 million on benefits, but requiring twice as many houses, twice as many health services, whatever. If we hadn't had any immigration, we'd have 1 million people working, all providing, nobody on benefits, and half the requirements of housing, education and health.
We would only have that if there was an extra thing involved, which would be tough love from government to push them off benefits.
Yes, yeah.
Because if we don't have that, we end up with no immigrants, 1 million job vacancies,
Yes.
and 1 million people still sat on benefits.
Yeah.
So, but we need that extra thing about pushing.
So is the
people off
solution that
benefits.
simple then? Stop the benefits being so easy to get, stop immigration, and then the British people get working. Because we're actually saying here, I can't remember the numbers now, I just said them a minute ago, we're actually saying we've got 9 million people ready to work.
9 million people, nearly 10 million people who are not working.
Yes, who are economically inactive,
Yeah.
who could work is what I'm
Who
trying
could
to say.
work, who
So
should
we have,
work.
we have a fantastic pool of workers sitting there not doing anything.
Yep.
And we keep...
Who's a net drain on the country.
Correct.
Who are
Yeah.
killing us.
Yeah.
So not only have they got crap lives, and their children are more likely to have crap lives, they're also killing everyone else's lives as well because they're a drain on the country.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to stop mass migration overnight, basically. All the businesses then have to start looking at how they need employment. So some businesses will mechanise. So we don't need fruit pickers. We've got robots that do that in other countries. But British farmers don't want to buy the equipment because it doesn't make commercial sense, because I can pay all these people pennies to do it. But once they know there is no more fruit pickers, they will all then buy the equipment to pick fruit. Those machines then all need maintenance. So instead of employing 100 people to pick fruit, mechanising has now created 2 well-paid jobs to maintain those robots. At the same time, we need to start forcing people off benefits. I don't want to force people off benefits into a worse life. That's not fair. So I would stop all benefit increases. So benefits become less and less value as years go on. And I would be as nice as we can pushing people into better paid jobs. They have to be better off for them to be pushed into work. We just need tough love. It'll be hard for some people. And I want disabled people working. I don't want disabled people sat on benefits, because there's 1 million jobs they can do. So we don't treat people who claim they've got mental health issues. The best thing for your mental health is to get a job. And we'll push you into work. It all can be done. It just takes a government with backbone.
But I also think if you stop immigration, then market forces will come into play as well.
Yes,
won't
it
they?
will.
So there's people who aren't working, there'll be probably more enticements for them to then work.
Wages will go up. They'll be offered enticements. They'll be offered benefits to work. And a lot of the crap jobs will all go because they'll mechanise them. It'll be much better paid jobs, and they'll get better benefits. And we'll all have to pay more for services and things in shops. But if that means most people in my country have got a better life, I'll pay more for that. It won't happen overnight. It needs a plan.
I want to finish with, just conscious of the time, something that one of your listeners or viewers wrote, which I thought was really interesting, and I'd forgotten about it, but I do remember it now. and I can't remember which article it was that they were responding with. I've actually put here, interesting, I will discuss this with Nick. So this character who's called Rak Emmet, I don't know who you are, Rak Emmet, but there's a picture of a guy with a pair of glasses and a moustache. We need to organise politically on the same line as Solidarność in Poland. And this actually goes back to my belief now that basically we're ruled by communists. This is a communist society. This is what I'm getting to in my head. We need to organise politically on the same lines as Solidarność in Poland. In the early 1980s, Solidarność, solidarity in English, gave rise to a broad, non-violent, anti-communist social movement that at its height claimed some 9.4 million members. It is considered to have contributed greatly to the fall of communism. This is the way forward. In the meantime, we must expose this regime abroad and urge our American friends to impose sanctions on the communist regime ruling Britain. So, I mean, it's quite... This is the way this guy is thinking, and I think he's right. Unfortunately, the UK has become a staunchly authoritarian state. Our institutions are politicised and in disarray. Law and order is a la carte, and rules are only relevant when these serve the regime. So this guy is saying basically, he's accepted the fact we're a communist regime, authoritarian state. He's saying we need to organise politically as an anti-communist organisation. And he's also saying that countries abroad need to recognise, which I think, as we discussed earlier, when we're getting some of the feedback from other countries, that we are a communist state, and they need to impose sanctions on us for that reason. How does that sound to you? Pretty radical.
Very radical.
But I'm not sure yet, Nick, that you have fully embraced where we are. I think you had an idea where we were. And I think you're starting to now say, quite rightly, we've been like this for years. But I think we've kind of, and as you said, the veil has dropped in the last 2 months, hasn't it, with Labour? You know, the Tories were basically the same, but Starmer's come in and said, let's chuck away the bit of paper pretending we're something else. We're not a democracy, we're a communist state, and you guys had better suck it up, basically. I
don't think we're in the position yet where we need to do that. I think we're in the foothills of being a communist state, but we're nowhere near there yet. I foresee, like I say, I foresee change coming. I like some of his ideas. We do need to coalesce around a political party. At the moment, that's Reform UK. Whether or not they're the party we need, we don't know. But at the next council elections, which is May next year, we'll see if Labour get a spanking, and we'll see what comes out of that. I just don't think it's as bleak as he thinks it is at the moment, and I don't think we need a scalpel to pop a boil. I think.
Well, I probably there's various stages for me in my political evolution.
You're still working on
it. There's various stages for me in my political evolution. One is, I think I told you, pre-COVID, where I had no freaking idea what was going on. Then there was the trans thing when my eyes started to open. Then there was COVID where my eyes really opened. And then you and I met and we talked and my eyes opened even further. But my eyes have opened even further in the past couple of months, because I think you're right, we've seen the naked reality of the state that runs us. And how it works, and a fundamental point that you and I have discussed, and I see more and more people talking about now, is the fact that the British people have voted time and time again over the past 15, 20 years for a government, and have given directions to that government what it wants to happen, and the government has chosen to ignore that. And this two-party state, this Labour-Tory government, which is basically one gigantic melange as far as I can see, has steadfastly ignored the wishes of the people, but the people have got nowhere else to go. So I think it needs to be a scalpel. I think we need a revolution. And now we're even in a situation now where me saying we need a revolution potentially could get me banged up in jail. So if that in itself doesn't tell you the story, that, you know, I can be banged up now for saying to you we need a revolution here to overthrow this government. because you're not allowed to do anti-government rhetoric now, are you? So I'm saying that. So I think you're right. When you said to me then, wait till the council elections, you're still seduced by the idea that we're living in a democracy. It'll make no difference what happens in the council elections to the way we are treated.
Oh, not at the council elections. It will give us a flavour of the public mood and how that's going to react at the next general election. We don't need a revolution in this country. We're nowhere near wanting a revolution. Revolution's the last thing anybody really should want. All should be the last resort, because you've got no idea what comes out of revolution. You can't control them. I wrote an article the other day on Iran, 1979 revolution, supported by the socialists, thinking they were going to end up in charge. That didn't work out too clever. Khomeini had a different idea on that. They thought he was their puppet. He had a different idea. So we don't need a revolution. Our system works. Our system takes time to change things, and it should take time to change things. Otherwise, you can get movements that come in like the woke agenda or the net zero agenda. You can change everything overnight because suddenly all the people want it. Well, we don't care what all the people want. These things need to take time and go through processes, and should take decades. We're at the beginning of change. It will take a decade or two, but I believe our system will work. I believe we'll get better politicians coming through. I believe the English and the British have seen the state of those parties and want better politicians, and will not vote for those parties with those politicians in them. We're just on a journey.
But there's no alternative at the moment. There's no alternative. And I actually, if you see film of North Korea, I was just thinking about this now. If you see film of North Korea, and you see what's he called, Jing Jong? I can't remember what the guy's called, the young guy who Kim Jong-il, is that what he's called? So, and he's spouting rubbish, and they're all clapping and applauding. Isn't that what's happening now? So we got Kier Starmer
to a certain extent
saying far right thugs, and then we have mobs on the streets with pre-printed. This is what's happening. This is our reality now. People like me, people like you, who actually went out on the enough is enough, because we're not happy with our government's policies around immigration or whatever, went out on the streets. Next thing, far right thugs, blah blah blah. It's Kier Starmer. You even printed a picture of him looking like Mao, didn't you? Next minute, mobs of government lackeys on the streets, pre-printed posters, stop the anti-fascists. What's the difference between those characters and the ones who are applauding Kim Jong-il in North Korea? They're the same. They're all government stooges.
Yeah, exactly.
They're frightened not to say the right thing, not to be there or whatever. In the same way the people who are protesting are frightened. There's the same fear there that we must toe the government line and say we must stop those fire. What is the difference?
There's not much of a difference, apart from scale, but we're nowhere near that. I think we will overcome this. We've overcome things like this before in the 70s. Calling for revolution is very dangerous because you cannot foresee the outcome. We could end up, the odds are we'll end up with something a lot worse if we had revolution.
I think I'm just calling for a proper democracy. Where the people we vote for, and I don't know how it's come about, Nick, where the people we vote for, and again, bear in mind this voting thing, it's like in Russia, you can only vote for Putin, can't you? Who's going to win the election? Well, it's going to be Putin. Why? Because he's the only party, isn't it? You know what I mean? So he always wins, even though the numbers. So we've ended up in that situation now where you can only vote for one party. They call it the uni party, don't they? Which is whatever. You vote for that party, the party says, I'll do this for you, that for you, this for whatever, then doesn't do it. And then 6 years later, it's time to vote again. Well, I voted last time and you haven't done it. All right, but I'll vote. Right, who can I vote for? Same party. Yeah. That's where we are.
You're right, and that's where we've been now for a couple of decades.
Yes.
But things are changing.
Yeah.
Reform UK now have 5 seats.
Yes.
No one thought they were going to get any seats at the beginning of the election cycle.
Yeah.
They've got 5 now. 4 million votes. Labour only got 9.5 million votes.
Yeah.
So depending what Reform do next time, depending what the Tories do, this is politics. We can't have change overnight. It needs to be slow. And we've got to this stage now, slowly,
Yeah.
and it's going to take the same amount of time to get to somewhere better. We just need to realise things take time. We need to not give up. We need to engage in our political system until they change the political system, and then we don't use the political system anymore. Then you are looking at violence on the streets and revolution. But we've still got democracy. We've got a form of democracy at the moment,
Yeah, I think we have.
and this is the only game in town, and we will take back control. We will.
It's how we get there, isn't it? I think I told you a few weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, I went to a dinner party with some people who were from the COVID thing.
Yeah.
There was one guy there, and he's actually I think I sent you one of his messages actually. He was quieter at the party than the other, who were far more.
Yeah.
He is not on social media at all.
Mm.
He doesn't engage in anything like that because he doesn't want any kind of footprint around him there. And I was kind of looking at him and chatting with him, and I was thinking, you've actually maybe gone, your approach is maybe too suspicious, too whatever. I'm now looking back on that and him and thinking, has he got the right idea? Does he understand what we're living in now? Does he understand more than I understand about the position and the government and the democracy in this country, or the lack of democracy in this country? I'm almost starting to think he's got a far better idea than I have. Because you and I are very open, aren't we? We're here talking to our gentle viewers about all these things.
All depends what you mean. Has he got a better idea? So what's he doing with his silence?
No, he's not doing anything with it. I agree with that.
So he may not be a part of the problem, but he's not part of the answer.
He's not part of the answer.
So,
but I think I agree. He's not proactive in terms of doing it because, like a lot of people, he's employed. He's got worried about his job.
He's a coward. He's hiding. He's hiding.
If you're watching, I won't say your name, but you know who you are. Yeah. You're not a coward, but anyway.
Well, to me, it sounds like he's a coward. He's hiding.
Well, I mean, he has a wife. He has a family.
All cowards have wives and family and children.
Yeah. And it's difficult for him to...
It's always difficult for cowards.
Yeah. God. Are you trying to destroy my friendship with this guy? So, I better not mention his name. But no, I admittedly, he's doing nothing.
No.
You're doing something. Hopefully I'm helping you do something. Yeah. But is his vision of this country, this government, the correct one, that maybe now I'm starting to come round to more, basically, that we are not living in a democracy, that we're living in a communist state, and that we don't have a free will to operate as we want.
There's a term for this online. It's called being black-pilled. So we've talked about we've talked red and blue before.
Yeah.
Black pill is the pill you take that because you think everything has gone to the dogs. There's no point.
Yeah.
We're being controlled. We're all going to die. There's no point fighting.
I think he's been black-pilled.
It's called being black-pilled.
I've not heard that one.
And we need to avoid being black-pilled. We need to avoid black-pilling other people because that's what happens. You can catch black-pill by speaking and spending time with people who are black-pilled.
All right. I hope I'm not dispensing black pills to our audience.
No. I'm glad you raised the point. Black pill gets you nowhere.
Yes.
Giving up gets you nowhere.
Yeah, I would say he's not contributing to the fight.
Yeah, he's given up.
Yeah.
He's given up, and all he's doing is trying to make his death and the death of the country as least painful for him as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no way to live your life. It's no way.
He is kind of helping a bit because he's sending me stuff now. Which
well, you might be red pilling him a little bit. You can't come out of black pill.
Oh, maybe I'm bringing him.
So he's probably had no one to talk to since COVID.
Yeah.
And he's got himself into a black pill stage.
Yeah.
And speaking to you about stuff.
Yeah.
He's beginning to see there is hope.
Yeah.
You've got hope, and you talk about things. I want. So you it sounds like you're helping him.
Yeah. Oh, good. He mentioned something, and we're finishing here, I know, but just maybe for another episode. He mentioned something called the Great Replacement Theory.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
All right, well, maybe we could talk about that in another episode. Yeah. Nick Buckley, MBE, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Did you enjoy that video? I think you did. Come on now, hit that bell, subscribe, comment. Let's build this channel. I need more followers. I need more subscribers. Be part of the journey. See you soon.